Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today we've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Hogue X5 Wharncliffe. This is a bizarre looking knife, and I'll tell you what, first off, thank you very much to Hogue Knives for sending this in for review. I really appreciate that. They asked me if there was anything I wanted to take a look at, and I specifically requested this. Why? Let me tell you guys, I love reviewing knives. I love getting my hands on as many things as possible. But after you handle, hundreds and hundreds of knives, there are certain designs that are just kind of boring. And we're going to talk about this knife today and the things that I like and don't like about it functionally. But I was drawn to this because it is so different from the stuff that I generally review. And I appreciate that about this knife. There are a lot of things here that just say, you know what? We're going to do this just because it's fun. And that's the kind of thing that I like to see. I like taking a look at things that are interesting for reasons beyond, the idea of it being utilitarian. And while, a lot of the elements of this knife are certainly utilitarian, I think there are some things at play here that are just like, hey, this is fun and crazy, right? So that's why. So thank you, Hogue, for letting me take a look at this. This knife is available right now. I will link it right down below. It comes in a couple of different aesthetic forms, so you can choose the one that works best for you. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. There's a link for Patreon right down below. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this USA-made knife. Yes, Hogue Knives made in the United States. That's great. Overall length coming in at about 8 1/4. So this is a full-size knife. Blade length is coming in at, I'm going to call that just shy of 3.75, maybe 3.7. Cutting edge, 3.5 inches. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and its little brother, the Ontario Rat Model 2. Sorry, let's move this down just a little bit so it's easy to view it. Yeah, this is not quite the same overall length as the Rat 1. Remember, we're at an angle there, guys. But still, absolutely a full-size knife with a full-size knife presence. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and Spyderco Para 3? About the same overall length as the PM2, right? Definitely longer than the Spyderco Para 3. More cutting edge than both, though. Let's go ahead and do one more here up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Benchmade Griptilian. So remember, the Ritter Hogue here is also manufactured by Hogue. The manufacturing quality, by the way, absolutely does carry over into this knife. Everything that I have ever handled from Hogue has just been made in a spectacular way. Whatever form it takes, the fit and finish and quality overall has been excellent, and that's no exception here, even though we're looking at a different locking mechanism, a different deployment mechanism versus the Ritter Hogue RSK MK1 G2. But that same level of fit and finish is there, and that's something that I really appreciate considering Hogue is manufacturing knives in the United States. It's always nice to see. Carry profile up against the Spyderco Para 3. Overall thickness. Yeah, the X5 is definitely not thin. There's a lot of meat to this knife, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. Yeah, this is not super long. It's not quite as long as the PM2. Maximum height, in this case, it actually, if you combine this area with the flipper tab, it's actually a bit taller than both the PM2 and Para 3. And it's also thicker. This is going to be a bit of a pocket hog. At first glance, the first time in the hand, you think, oh, it's not that big and bulky. But when you compare it to some of these knives, that's definitely the case. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness of the Hogue X5, I'm going to guess it's like 135 to 145 thousandths. Okay, there we go, 140. It says 146, probably about 145. Materials, we're looking at, I'm going to guess this is a Cerakote. Why? It's not a DLC because of the color they achieved here. It's probably not a PVD. Here's an example of a PVD-coated bronze blade, and I can tell you it looks and feels quite a bit different. This, the handle here has been Cerakoted by River's Edge Cutlery. upon my request, feels very similar to the blade. I don't know this for sure. The blade feels like a flat dark earth Cerakote, which is fine. It's not going to be quite as durable as PVD, and certainly not as durable as the DLC that you might get on like a black coated spider coat or something like that. But it's fine. It's definitely intended to add corrosion resistance and a little bit of extra just general blade protection. And it should take quite a while for that type of coating to wear off. But anyways, we have likely flat dark earth Cerakoted CPM 154, which is not going to be everybody's favorite blade steel flavor. But I still love CPM 154, and I definitely do not shy away from it at this price point. That's me. You don't have to think like me, right? This is priced very similarly to other ProTech knives. And yes, I said ProTech. ProTech being they make automatic knives, you know, in the United States, but using a lot of the same materials. And yeah, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. 6061 T6 aluminum. And then no, as far as I can tell, nothing else in there that's steel. So I don't know. I'm going to say we're looking at 4.5 to 5 ounces. Yeah, there we go, 4.94 ounces. So that's going to be over the mark for a lot of people. Too big and too bulky to carry. For me, it's 5 ounces. I don't really care. I don't really care about ratios either. It feels like it's got pretty good balance. In fact, it's balanced right where, you know, they want you to put your index finger. So it's fine. It really doesn't feel that heavy. It is definitely going to be wide in the pocket. It's going to have a pocket pecker, as another, a much more famous and well-known YouTuber has, you know, that term was created by. Yeah, so if you're going to carry anything else in your pocket, you're going to be dealing with that. It's going to be big. It's going to be bulky. Not something I would recommend in fitted pants or athletic shorts, anything like that. But if you wear outdoor sort of, you know, work pants or jeans or something like that, not really that big of a deal. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the description in the section that says my tools. I think the pivot is a T10. That's what it looks like anyway. T10. Yeah, the pivot's a T10, which is great, like the large size fastener. Same thing over here. Then we have a bunch of, I don't need to check them, those are T8 screws all the way across, except for, well, let's check that one. I believe that pocket clip screw is a T6. No, I'm wrong. I think all of these are T8. Here's a T8. We'll just check them real quick. Sorry, normally I skip this part. Handle screws, T8. The lock switch screw is a T8, and the pocket clip screw is also a T8. So there you go. It's T8 across the board. And considering we only have heads on one side, I would say the hardware's pretty minimal. I don't think this is going to be super duper difficult to take apart, but then again, Hogue's warranty may or may not allow you to do that. I don't know. You'll have to check. If there's something going wrong with your knife, the best thing you can do is contact Hogue and say, hey, what should I do here, right? That way you don't void your warranty on your pretty expensive knife, right? So anyways, this is a button lock. And it feels different than like a button lock like the ProTech Malibu. It feels, I don't know, tight. Like, I want to say tight, but then again, it falls shut, right? This area right here, as we approach this point of additional friction, right? It kind of feels like a Benchmade axis lock, but that's not what's happening here, right? It's if you're not holding the button down, then there's enough friction to just hold the blade in whatever place. But as soon as I push that button all the way in, it lets the blade drop. So there's, you know, to a certain point. I mean, you can definitely like whip it all the way closed if you want to, right? But there's additional friction, and that friction builds up to about right here, and then you sort of have to push the blade in to this area that's acting, and it's necessary, right? Because it needs the detent to flip, and it works really, really well. It's actually pretty satisfying to flip over and over and over again. Yeah, I kind of like this. Flipper tab is gigantic. I don't think it really needed to be that big, but it is, so okay. Despite a lot of areas on this knife being pointy and pokey, I'll say that fidgeting, I'm sorry, I must have spit on this knife at some point. Fidgeting around and just messing with this knife over and over again is pretty friendly. I don't really have an issue with this, and I think you can do this all day and not really, you know, bother your hands. So certainly just using it like a regular knife, at least in terms of deploying it, it's not going to cause an issue there. The edges of the flipper tab are nicely knocked down. It's just a really big flipper tab. You cannot lock the knife in the closed position, but you can, for whatever reason, lock the knife out in the open position. I don't know why you'd need to do that, but a lot of knives from Hogue have that switch there. So it's there if you want it. It's not really in the way. Let's talk about ergonomics. This is an ergonomic disaster. This is an Alan Eichowitz design. And I can't say that his design language always speaks to me, but he's well known, has made a lot of knives, has done a lot of things in the knife world that were very, very successful. It's just my aesthetic tastes don't sync up with the stuff that he makes all the time, except in this knife's kits we're going to talk about. But I'll tell you, as much as I love I'll be honest about this, I think the lines of this knife are ugly, but in a way that it is appealing. In the same way that, like, a pug is kind of appealing to me. Or a really odd... sometimes when you see an exotic sports car, it's like the lines are so intense that it makes you're kind of like, ugh, I don't like... Have you ever seen the Pagani Zonda? Yeah. Ooh, that knife looks just like it sounds. Pagani Zonda. Like, it's kind of like, yikes. But it's also like, wow, it's kind of spectacular, you know? It's just kind of freaking weird looking. That's what's happening here. The lines are ugly, but also, for whatever reason, to me, appealing. But then when you go to put this knife in your hand, it's like the knife insists that your index finger is here. It also insists on you dealing with these points and this, you know, heavy bowled out area right here and this area back here. It's very angular and very sharp. These edges right here are not super duper friendly. This is not a knife that I'd want to do a lot of work with without gloves. I think you probably could have guessed that without me saying, right? Now, on top of that, we have a compound ground blade. We have a thicker grind back here and then a thinner grind up here. And it's also two separate angles. This can be, you know, in specific circumstances, I suppose. The examples of which I'm not going to be able to give you because I don't know, right? To me, it's like, wow, neat blade, right? Two different edges, two different angles, and they are, the one back here, the primary grind is thicker than the grind that's out here that leads out to the tip. So you can actually, I believe, press this. Yeah, this secondary edge can be pressed all the way down flat. So if you're trying to make cuts like that, then you can do that. And then if you need to make more of a slicing cut, I suppose you can start up here and do that if you want to. Draw cuts and things, you can absolutely do that because this is a Wharncliffe with a straight edge. There's no belly, it's just two completely different angles. So this will be extremely utilitarian for some cutting circumstances. For people needing a continuous belly to do more of the slicing tasks, nah, it's not going to work nearly as well. It also doesn't have much of a tip. You can still get into packages and things, but your puncturing and breaching tasks really aren't going to be there. I don't know. It's like you can make this as complicated as you want and apply it into as specific cutting circumstances as you want to. I think generally for EDC, it'll work fine. It won't be problematic until it's time to sharpen it. And with there being two separate edges, much like the case with any Tanto blade, any American Tanto blade, you're going to have to be sharpening two separate edges, right? Because there's a distinct, you know, there's an angle here. So you're going to have to deal with that, and this is thicker than this. So you're going to have to change, the angle changes out here, right? So you're going to have to adjust. That's going to be something that not everybody enjoys doing. Some people are going to be just fine, right? They can do that. If you have something like a KME that works on, you know, it's like a guided system, then it may not be as difficult. I have a KME and I still don't want to do stuff like that. I'd rather have a blade like this where it's all just continuous curvature, right? But that's what you're looking at here. So yeah, ergonomically, not comfortable at all. Absolutely not comfortable. And on top, it's funny, the pocket clip really is not creating any issue. It's really the sharpness and the severity of all of these lines right here. They're just kind of really intense. The blade like I said, super cool looking. And I love the flat dark earth finish. I think it's really nice. It's just the angle that's going to be weird for sharpening. There is a bit of a sharpening trail right there, so that's nice. A flat that carries out about 65% the length of the blade. There's a nice swedge out here. I don't think you're going to have to worry too much about the durability of this blade. I think it's going to be plenty strong. And then the edge, neither of them are horribly thin. So this is not going to be a laser beam. It's also not the thickest knife in the, maybe back here. This one's okay, right? General EDC tasks, you're probably going to be just fine. Says Sig Sauer, and then it says USA X5 on this side, CPM 154, and Hogue. Kind of weird placement for these right here. I wish it was all in here, or just not there at all, right? But it is, so okay. Truthfully, if we're going to talk about weird placement of things, that right there is a massive eyesore. That okay, it's there, but I hate it. It's not hurting anything functionally. I just hate how it looks. This inlay right here is G10, and it's slightly more raised in this area intentionally, and then it's flush back here, and it's fit pretty well. There's a little bit of a gap right there, not anything terrible. I've certainly seen the same on knives that cost substantially more money from much more prestigious, I want to say much more prestigious manufacturing companies, right? Because Hogue is really, really good. But I've seen knives that cost way more money with similar inlay materials and having roughly the same amount of gap. So I don't want to judge it too hard on that. But that logo right there is just super ridiculously ugly. But they decided to put it there, and it's not really hurting anything. It's on both sides. So, okay. There's a lanyard hole if you want to have a lanyard. This is comes to a seam back here, and then it's just got some holes. It's okay. It definitely goes with the rest of the knife. In fact, let me say this. There's nothing on this knife that doesn't go with any other part of the knife. Like, everything is equally intense, right? Everything is equally bizarre and crazy and intense. There's nothing like they didn't theme the pocket clip correctly with the rest of the knife. They didn't do the handle as intense as the blade. No, like, everything looks like it's all one continuous elements. And so I do appreciate that. That's part of what's creating the draw. Even the parts of the knife that I'm like, ew, ugly. I'm like, well, it does kind of go with the rest. It still looks like it's supposed to be part of the knife, right? Pocket clip, it's actually all right. I don't like that it comes out to a bill and then the bill is flat and slightly angled down, but it's okay. It doesn't create much of a hot spot, and it's going to carry plenty deep. There's really not going to be hardly any part of this knife sticking up out of your pocket. Since this is not an exposed frame lock or anything like that, you can put your hands wherever you want when you want to flip it, which is great. The button disengages easily. There's a nice large stop pin back here with a little bit of shouldering, and it does absolutely lock out completely and totally solid. There is no pivot lash, and there is no detent lash. It is solid all the way around. How about centering? I believe it is dead on center. Can we see? With the seam there? Yeah, that is dead centered. Absolutely. So Hogue, once again, is creating something here that may not be visually appealing to everybody, and certainly won't be ergonomically appealing to, I would say, pretty much anybody. But the overall fit and finish is really, really good. Like, little things, just like the final cutting bevel of this is just perfect. Hogue is really good at manufacturing high quality items. A lot of their knives have this insanely overly tactical appearance to them, and this is arguably the most intense knife that I've seen from Hogue. It's made very well. It will function. It's made out of materials that will last and do a good job, materials that you want to see on a knife. My favorite steel of all time, still, CPM 154, right? So I don't have a problem with it. You can judge this however you want. The problems with this knife are with the ergonomics. And I know 100% that not everybody's going to find the same sort of novelty appeal with the aesthetics. A lot of people are going to go, nope, it's ugly, and it just means, to me, it's ugly. It's not like, oh, it's a pug, I love it. No, they're just going to hate it, right? That's fine. It comes down to your aesthetic preferences. But Ergonomics, yeah, the ergonomics on this knife are not good. They are not comfortable. This is not a knife that would be comfortable to use if you are barehanded or with gloves. And it's also going to be difficult, even for somebody using a guided system, to keep a good edge or a quality looking edge on this thing because of the two separate angles. There might be, you might balance that out with some added utilitarian benefit with this compound ground blade. But considering how I use my knives, it's just like, well, as soon as it goes dull, it's never going to look like that again because I'm never going to get it perfect. That's just me. You might be able to, right? So the price, $212. Do I think that's a fair price? I mean, yeah, this is right in line with what I see with ProTech and a lot of Benchmade stuff. They're using a different blade material than what Benchmade uses, but like US made aluminum and CPM 154, and we're looking at quality that is just as good, if not better in some cases, than some ProTech knives I've seen. I don't really have a problem with that, especially considering it's made in the United States. The biggest reason not to buy this knife is because it is visually insane. You may or may not like that. And ergonomically, it's a disaster. A lot of what I don't like about this, I think, could have been fixed with just some less intense. This area right here is so intense. And it's so sharp right in here, right? Maybe if the entire knife was like a 1/4 inch larger or a 1/2 inch larger, and I just had a little more room with the curvature of this handle, but that's just talking about my hands. Look, if you are like me and you're sick of the same knife design, right? It's just like so many companies are just making straight lined, just overly simplified knives, and it's because they work really well, right? And they sell because that's what people want. Like, people don't want anything, well, not everybody, but some people just don't want anything visually crazy. If you want something that is massively, massively different than, I would say, pretty much anything else out on the market right now, at least that I'm aware of, and you want it to be made well, and you want it to be made in the United States, and you like Wharncliffes, right? This might be right up your alley, and you'll be happy with the quality if you can overlook the ergonomics are so bad. If you can get around that, though, you might like this. You might just be wanting to buy it just for something different. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As far as whether or not I can recommend it to the vast majority of people who are shopping at this price point, no. I think there's lots of things that will serve you better, but I do love this just because it's wild. Stuff like this is so much more fun to review and to look at, right? I don't think Hogue and Alan Eichwitz were sitting around going, how can we make the most comfortable knife in the entire world? No, I think that they were sticking to the design language that, Hogue is accustomed to and Alan Eichwitz is accustomed to, and they just wanted to make something really, really super aggressively tactical, right? But they applied the same level of quality that Hogue always applies to their stuff. So it is what it is. That's kind of the conclusion I'm coming to. If you love how this looks and you don't mind the idea of very uncomfortable ergonomics, then yeah, knock yourself out. I think you're probably going to love it, right? If you don't love how it looks and ergonomics are really important to you, you want to get to the best bang for your buck for $200 to $220, pass on this. There's lots of stuff out there. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Hogue, I really appreciate you guys sending this in. I had a lot more fun taking a look at this knife than the vast majority of the stuff that's come to the channel over the last month, to be honest. So yeah, this was fun. Thank you very much. Make sure you check out Hogue Knives. They do make a lot of really, really great recommendable stuff. So check them out. Guys, make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.